Have you noticed that there's a lot of promises out there about how to fix yourself, how to become a better version of yourself, how to optimize your life, how to finally get unstuck? There was a time in my life when people might have said that I was stuck. And looking back, that wasn't what it was. You want to know how I knew that? Because all of the unstuckness things that I tried didn't unstick me. Because I was in a crucible of sorts. It was a slow and what felt like a relentless alchemy, a transformational process occurring under pretty extreme conditions: trauma, grief, loss, betrayal, life-threatening and destabilizing physical events, estrangement. All the elements were there: fire, extreme pressure, the cooling off of the forge that takes time before you can see what remains, if anything at all. Does a diamond look like a diamond when it begins as carbon? What about the pearl forming in an oyster? Or the chrysalis, where the butterfly begins its transformation? So these metaphors are helpful, poetic even, but they still fall short because they don't carry the full weight of human experience, where the ground has broken open and everything we thought we knew, everything we relied on, is just falling apart or already gone. And inside that time, the hardest part wasn't only the pain, not for me. It was the loneliness, the feeling that there was no real room anywhere in the kinds of thoughts and feeling states I was inside of. As if the world had space for people who were fine, people who could implement the fixes, try on the modalities. I remember at that time being in a popular grief support group. You know, there are support groups for every kind of grief imaginable: complex grief, ambiguous grief, pet grief, miscarriage grief, spousal grief, grandchildren grief, suicide grief, death by drug poisoning grief. Yet, there is almost nothing for betrayal grief. I might as well have been on Mars or even farther out in the solar system. I think by and large people want to preserve the good memories of those they've loved. They want those memories to survive, especially after someone has died. Most people don't know how to sit inside the heartbreak that lives in anger or what rises up out of betrayal. And I imagine to this day that's a very hard thing to talk about for most people. Losing someone, for example, and then finding out how they betrayed you when they were alive. I remember I had a little something that I wrote down on a card that I read every day that said something like this: loneliness is not your fault. It never proves that you're defective. For those of us who were or who are standing in the middle of something that feels like it might break us open completely, you can imagine how important it is to have your experience reflected back to you in a shared field of human awareness. We really need to feel that we belong to the human community. And one of the ways we know that is through how our experience is held and reflected back to us. There were some other things that began to reveal themselves inside that lonely terrain. Firstly, I knew that no one was coming in to save me, mostly because it was crickets in those early days. I really was on my own. Secondly, what I did not yet have language for was this: when I could rest, even briefly, in conscious awareness, something began to shift. I didn't know that that was what it was back then, but something started to change. Space appeared. Not the kind of space that erases pain, but the kind that can hold it. And inside that space, I began to notice something else. Capacity. Just a little at first, a widening in the nervous system, a place where breathing became possible again. And from that place of capacity, everything else began to emerge. Choice. Not the type of choice the self-improvement world talks about, but the kind that allows you to take action aligned with your values, meaning, and purpose. Over time, I began to see that there was an architecture rising up, a scaffolding of sorts. Conscious awareness, capacity, choice. And I came to understand something else. That architecture was not something that fixed any of it once and for all. It was something to return to all the time. Again and again. Conscious awareness, capacity, and choice. As life continues to unfold, and somewhere along the way, another realization began to emerge. That feeling that there was no room in the world to navigate these difficult states, that went away. That is no longer carrying any truth. We're building it right now. Every time you listen to what I share here on YouTube, or you read something on my Facebook page, or pause with an Instagram reel that resonates, you may begin to notice where you might be on the continuum. Conscious awareness, capacity, choice. I'm building it. We're building it. A community and an architecture where people can stand in the truth of their lives without needing to pretend that they're already okay. A place where there's paradoxical permission to be beyond okay in your struggles and sense of not okayness. A space that moves beyond many of our common ideas of what constitutes bliss, joy, happiness, or peace. A place where sovereignty appears truthfully, not the kind we imagine when everything's going well, but the kind that can emerge even after the worst experiences of our lives. The experiences that we share, we fear that we might never come back from. This is not something you're going to get out of a Cracker Jack box or a 3-hour read. And this isn't another promise of self-improvement. It's much deeper than that. It's this. A place to stand. And from that place, life begins to move again. Over the next while, I'll be creating a few things that support this work more directly: guided orientations, a small free email course, and eventually a deeper exploration of the architecture of conscious awareness, capacity, and choice. There'll be daily support calls, weekly coaching, all in service of navigating this terrain together. You belong here. And if this speaks to you, stay close as the forge cools and the revealing begins. That is our crucible. Thank you for being here today and listening in. I'll talk to you soon.